Okay, today's a very special episode for two reasons. Today's the 200th episode of the Transform Your Workplace podcast, and it's my birthday. August 29th is when we're recording it. It should be up today, but I've got a very special guest, Angela Perkins, who's also my boss. Angela, hey, how you doing?
Hi, Brandon. Happy 200th episode and happy birthday.
Thank you. Today we're doing something a little unique. I've been on sabbatical all of August, so we thought we would have a short podcast discussing how it's going, both for me on sabbatical and for Angela, who's been without me, which I'm sure she's doing fine, but she's been without me for all of August. And we thought we'd talk about, like, it's a really unique benefit that a company would offer a sabbatical. And we offer them at 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years, although I don't know if anybody's made it to 30 years quite yet. But so people are close. And it's just it's such a fascinating benefit that I had the privilege of having this year. So I thought we'd talk about the benefits, really the pros and cons of it, and then also from my perspective, and then also risks for Xenium, and also the benefits of Xenium. So does that sound good?
That sounds great. I'm excited to talk about it.
When I first started, it really took me probably like a week and a half to really get settled in with the sabbatical. I don't take a lot of time off, so it is really hard for me to just disconnect. In this modern world of like white collar work, we're just always connected. So I think you and I were talking at one point. It's like, hey, just shut off email from your phone. I was like, I never thought about like just switching it off.
Right. I had to get in kind of scolding mode because you were definitely still there and thinking about Xenium, which is great. And your loyalty was there even during sabbatical, which is natural. But yeah, trying to get out of the day-to-day, especially with how hard you worked in preparation for the sabbatical. I think that was part of it, is you were going 80 miles an hour up until the day you left. And so to just switch that off is kind of not human either. So it made sense, but moving your email off was kind of a game changer, I think.
Yeah, and I think like one thing I was telling you that I was going to do, and you proofread it for me, but like the autoresponder is really everything, because it really sets the tone for, if you're going to be still looking at stuff, or if you need to just like literally delegate and push it off to somebody. Like if you need me, you actually have to go through, Angela or Julie. And most people have been respecting that. So I've been just deleting emails essentially.
Yeah, that's great.
One thing I kind of noticed about this sabbatical in general is that, since I haven't taken a lot of time off, and it's been 10 years that I've worked at Xenium in the workforce, I kind of feel like in today's modern world, 5 years probably seems like the right time. And I know it's a big burden on our business because it is a big cost, either in hard costs or productivity loss. But I kind of feel like 5 years is the right time, just because of like the way talent is. Like people just don't stay at companies that long. So if you want to give them an incentive, 10 years is like, it's light years away for a lot of people. Now I made it, and there's a lot of people at our company that have made it, but I kind of feel like you need more points of, refreshing your mind and your body. What do you think about that?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think you're right. I think what the big thing is the shift in the marketplace, and even if you think about how we look at resumes today when we're screening for new talent in our companies, we aren't necessarily saying, oh, there's been a lot of jumping around. They've moved every 2 years. It's almost become the norm. So to your point, people staying 10 years is like super cool. And Xenium's really proud of the tenure that we have. And we joke around with that, there's something in the water here, right? That has this long loyalty sort of vibe about it. But making sure that we're recognizing what the up and coming talent is motivated by is something that we have to keep looking at. I think sabbaticals in general, I'm just, as listeners are saying, gosh, we have a pretty healthy PTO policy, but we've never considered a sabbatical. It's a pretty unique benefit still today. I think back actually to the Beyond Comp work that we did, and the big survey stuff that we did. We uncovered that not a lot of small to mid-sized businesses even offer a sabbatical. So it's, yes, we need to be looking at the frequency of it. Other employers that have never offered it need to be looking at, is that something that would be a motivating factor for both retention and recruitment? Because time off and the ability to explore and do things outside of work
Yep.
is, becoming that much more of a focal point.
Yeah. And I think like sabbaticals, like just looking at myself, I don't take a lot of PTO. In fact, I recently I capped out on PTO. I just don't take it. So I think we can carry over like 6 weeks at a time, and I'm at that mark. So for
Mm-hmm.
somebody like me who I pride myself on being there, being productive all the time, and I love being connected. I love my work. I genuinely love my work. To me, the sabbatical really speaks to a person like me, and for an employer, a sabbatical would be great for your really productive people who literally just need a break, and you almost have to force them to do it because you can't really force somebody to take PTO.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean by that?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because, the PT, you could almost, just flipping it back on you, you are really strategic about your PTO. I always give you a hard time about this, where there's like a 3-day weekend and you put a day on the front end and a day on the back end, and then you have 5 business, right? Or 5 days
Yeah.
off, but it's only
Yep.
2 days of PTO. And so it's really strategic utilization of that balance. You could take 2 to 3 weeks off and still have a lot of PTO left over. So you could do like a mini sabbatical if you were disciplined to do it. Right. So
Totally.
that's the other thing with employers is a sabbatical doesn't replace a strong, healthy PTO policy that is going to, again, let employees get away and take a break. I think it's hard because sometimes the job demands, whether the company demands it or not, you yourself hold yourself accountable to being here and being productive and doing all of that. So
Yeah.
the sabbatical did force you out the door. You would never have taken 4 weeks if
No, not at all.
it didn't require it. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it required it in the sense of you're going to take your sabbatical. It has to be consecutive 4 weeks.
Correct.
Pick your dates and go. So, I mean, I think that is a good fit for you.
Totally. I had a podcast listener, I think it was on Twitter. She saw that I was still active, and because that was one thing I really wanted to do is I wanted my presence to still be there and just to
Mm-hmm.
develop the personal brand. But she had posted a definition of sabbatical on Twitter towards me, and she was sort of calling me out, I think, and it was basically I can't remember the definition exactly, but it was like time off to be away from work, but to learn new things and to,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
whatever it may be. But I was like, that's a good perspective. Like literally
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
disconnect and focus on other things. Focus on a hobby, focus on something new that I want to learn, focus on my family, all those things. So
Right.
that's,
So let's talk about that. I
yeah.
mean, that if you think about the reason, and I want to hear from you in terms of the employee experience, but the employer intent behind the sabbatical is for exactly that. It's to detach,
Yep.
to reboot, to re-energize, to maybe explore something, like that you wouldn't be able to do in regular PTO. So
Hmm.
a lot of folks might travel internationally, or they might take a class that is going to be a 4 week, intensive class, or whatever the case may be. They're able to do that. The other added benefit for on the employer side, your gap, your not being here, allowed other folks to step up and step
Yeah.
in. Whereas if you weren't here, that opportunity wouldn't exist. And so people like the marketing support team that you have here were able to step in and do Brandon things. And that's a huge benefit for you, because when you come back, the ideal is that you don't take all of that back.
Correct.
You allow folks to keep some of those responsibilities because they grew while you were gone.
Yeah.
And so that's a huge benefit for the company. There's larger employers that do sabbaticals for exactly that. And I'm thinking of Intel specifically, they have a requirement around how you utilize your time.
Hmm.
And one of it has to be that you're developing a skill, so you have to take a class or you have to learn something new. And I don't know the intricacies of how they outline that, but you have to report it back to the company. And it's forcing people out of their comfort zones. So for you as an employee, I mean, do you feel like at any point, once you kind of truly detached, where did you invest your time in terms of doing something and learning something, or being someone that you can't be when you're at work all day?
It's a great question. I don't know if I have a specific answer for you, but I'll tell you that it took me a good week to really figure out how I wanted to spend it. Because early on, I really thought I was going to I was going to journal every day. I was going to prioritize everything that I wanted to accomplish. I sort of got into it, and I'm like, I started doing that, and then I was like, I just want to do what I enjoy, but do more of it. So I read a lot. I exercised every single day. I think I only missed one day of exercise, and it was only because I was traveling. So basically, we're on day 29 of sabbatical. I've exercised 28 days of it. So I'm proud of that. I've read a ton. I can't say that I've learned any like new specific skill or anything like that. I'm definitely
Sure.
learning.
Didn't take a cooking class.
No, I don't even
Yeah.
enjoy that. So, but I've spent a lot of time with my family. My kids are obviously
Yeah.
not in school right now. So I've been there for my family and my kids. I've spent more time with them. I've played Mario 3 with my son more times than I can imagine. It
That's
so
great.
for me, it was about connection, skill wise.
Yep.
I'm always sort of fine tuning and sharpening the saw, so to speak. So I knew you probably didn't have to worry about me from that perspective. I'm always trying to learn
But
new things.
I wouldn't underestimate what you did do and learn just by those things. When I say learn, it doesn't mean you
Yeah,
studied and learned, how to do karate or something. You know what I mean? Like it
yeah,
doesn't have to be a specific new, but just giving yourself extra perspective and
yeah.
space, I think that's huge. So, um, and would you say that you feel rejuvenated and have an energy about you for work that is unique from when you left
100,
3.5 weeks ago?
100%. 100%. I think that's the benefit that I would say, like probably the biggest benefit for Xenium and for me is that with this much time off, you truly get to detach.
Yeah.
You've been really great, almost to a fault in a way, because I'm like, I hate the isolation and I love the connection. You and
Sure.
I have a great partnership, and same with Julie too, who's on my team. It's like I have such a great connection, but at the same time, you guys detach from me completely, and I know that you do that out of respect, and I appreciate that. And it allowed me to like
Sure.
fully get away from Xenium. You guys took care of whatever probably came my way. So I feel refreshed. I feel re-energized. And by the time I come back on September 3rd, if I feel like it's gonna be a whole new me. Like I'm gonna come back
Yeah.
and I probably won't, to your point, won't take on a lot of the things that I was doing. Those will be absorbed by other people, and I'll come back and probably market Xenium better than ever. I hope.
Right. Right. No, I think energy around your role and how you feel at work is so key to productivity in general and not feeling worn down. And I think we all can get into the grind of just being exhausted. So
Yeah.
granted, going back to your point of is once every 10 years good enough, especially for someone that doesn't take a lot of longer breaks to rejuvenate.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe the sabbatical will actually be a jumping off point for you to be a little bit more intentional on your PTO management, and you'll realize that wow, I'm gonna give myself at least 1 week, one solid week, or maybe 10 days off once a year or something like that, versus long weekends or whatever. But that those things are, I think, important to recognize as benefits too.
With a month off, it's seriously so much time, and it's funny because there were times that I was in it and I'm not doing anything. I'm just kind of sitting around the house doing nothing, like twiddling my thumbs, and I'm like, I'm wasting the time. Like I could be using it. Like, and I did relax. I did enjoy it, but I think being intentional about it would be something I would like if I were to redo it all over again. I probably would probably do it in chunks. Like, okay, today I'm just literally going to do nothing. I'm going to sit around. But then
Sure,
other days
sure.
I would probably want to plan it out. What am I learning today? Who am I going to go have coffee with? And, things like that. So I think,
Right, right.
yeah. And I would also think like your point about a company saying like, okay, coming back and reporting on what you learn. I think that's another way to structure it. Like, even if you did like a sabbatical for 2 to 3 weeks, maybe the company says, okay, you need to learn this or you need to develop a skill and report back. But also maybe if you instead of a month, maybe you go to like 2 to 3 weeks and the company provides a little bit of cash too. And
Sure,
like
sure.
maybe then the employee can go on a vacation, because I felt like some of my best times were when I was out of my house, because then I felt
Of
like
course,
I was
right.
doing something worthwhile. Like my favorite,
It's the
yeah, my
experience.
favorite time
Yeah,
was in Sun River.
sure.
and I got a chance
Took
to
your
connect.
family.
Took my
You were away
family.
from the day to
Yep.
day. Yep.
Because then I'm not likely to clean the house or do things that are part of just regular life. I get to literally just
Right.
disconnect from even my life.
Right. What comes up for me is, we have a volunteer time off benefit as well at Xenium, and thinking about, contribute the employer contributing to something for the sabbatical could be interesting around volunteer
Oh, I
time
love that. Yeah.
too, is to say, right, like if you can dedicate whatever, 2 days of your 4 weeks or whatever you would want to put, then we would contribute X to a donation to that volunteer
Mm-hmm.
place that you put your time, or because all of that stuff is just so fulfilling. If an employer contributes to an employee feeling like they're giving back and they're contributing to the community and all of those things, I feel like you would see that benefit at work. So there's all kinds of fun, creative things you could do. And I think it's just important to continue keeping your pulse on what's important for today's
Exactly.
knowledge worker. You and I
Yep.
talked about that before you left. It's like, we don't ever go home in this space of, sort of just the white collar knowledge worker. You don't go home not thinking about work. And it's not
Exactly.
Xenium's fault. It's
Yeah.
just what it is. And so how do you continue to allow people to explore and find their purpose in other things?
If there's one thing we were talking about, like what'd you learn or what skill did you develop? I think the one thing that I really focused on was mindfulness and my mental health, because if you are connected all the time, I mean, stress is it's a killer. And for me, like I was taking walks all the time. I probably read 2 or 3 books on happiness while I was gone.
Sure.
The
Yeah.
book I just started was on sleep because I don't sleep well. And all those things is I want to gain the knowledge so I can actually take action in my life. Like if I'm on a regular workday schedule, where do I fit in, whether it's meditation or quick breaths or whatever it may be, that's going to make me more effective and healthier. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm working on that still.
Again, it's sort of the sabbatical provides space, right? So
Yes.
like all of those things, you are sort of forced to detach. It took you a little longer than maybe some would. I don't know. I mean,
Nah.
my 10-year sabbatical was spent on leave with my
Yeah.
now 9-year-old,
Yeah.
right? So I was in a whole different space than you were, and it certainly helped financially, right? Because you get paid during that sabbatical, and so it was like a paid leave for
Yeah.
me, but totally different. I mean, yes, I was detached, but I would have been anyway,
Mm-hmm.
because I would have been home with my newborn baby.
Ye-
So
yeah. And you said something very specific there. It provides space. And I think that's
yeah,
how I'd articulate it too, because in this constant state of busyness that we are, like everybody says, like, "Oh, how you doing? I'm busy," right? Like we can
yeah,
make excuses
right.
about
It's a reflex.
how we
Yeah,
fill up our time. Like we're always busy. You just fill it up with whatever
yeah,
whatever gets thrown at you or whatever. So I think there's excuses to be made, like when you are working and when you have family stuff going on. That like, how do I make the excuse if I'm out for a month that I don't have time for working on myself, or you know
you're
what I mean?
right.
It's
You're
a
so
lot easier. I
right.
have no
Yep,
excuse.
yep,
uh,
yep.
so
That's absolutely right.
couple downsides. I talk about isolation. It is hard because I'm just with my family and I try to reconnect with friends, but like you guys are like the people I work with are a lot of them are friends, and I enjoy being connected. So the isolation has been hard, and then the fear of like missing out and
Hmm.
just the world moving on without me. I always like to be needed. I'm
Sure.
a typical millennial. Love feedback, all those things. But like,
Right.
how much has changed
So that
without me being
faucet turned
there?
off for you. Yeah. Other than obviously your wife was probably giving you great feedback on how nice it was to have you there. And I
Yeah.
know your relationship with your son, he wants to be you, right? So
Yeah.
you were getting all kinds of feedback. It was just not of the professional nature. I think what comes up for me on that is purpose too. So many of us get so tied to our jobs, and that's our sense of purpose. So another added, I mean, so it's a downside to feel detached from that,
Hmm.
but it's a positive to sort of connect to other things besides your day to day work. And while, being fulfilled in your job is huge and super important, it's good to have some variety in that and not be isolated just to feeling fulfilled in terms of purpose with your job.
Hmm.
So I think that's a cool, painful at moments, right? Where you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to not do my work, right? And I'm just going to not worry about what's happening at Xenium. And that's hard
Yeah,
because you're so dedicated normally.
totally. Let's talk about
Yeah.
some of the benefits for Xenium, and then let's talk about some risks. So there are risks involved with sabbaticals. So the benefits first. From my perspective, and you probably have a different perspective than I would. The employee comes back refreshed and re-energized, hopefully, depending on how they spend the time and how healthy they were. The person, in my case, I get to lift myself up out of the day to day to where if I was sort of, still sharpening the saw, so to speak, I would hopefully come back with either new ideas, hopefully somewhat objective view since I've lifted myself out, and new learnings to apply to our business, in my particular role. Because I've, been studying, I had a chance to read, study, learn from other people, and then come back and come with a different approach. What do you think?
Right. You're out of the whirlwind.
Yeah.
You're out of the whirlwind. So your brain power is not taken up by tactical day to day challenges or other people's priorities, right? You're completely free to focus your energy somewhere else. So yeah, I would agree that's a huge benefit for both, for the employer and
Mm-hmm.
then for you,
Yeah.
health wise, just in terms of again having some space. And I already kind of mentioned from my perspective, the greatest benefit, aside from those things you just mentioned, is what it does for the team remaining. So I won't get into it now. I'll save this for Tuesday, Brandon, but I have some personal learnings from
Oh
you being gone,
gosh.
right? So gaps that are you're filling, that is great because you're filling them. And then you realize, oh wow. So if no one else knows how to do that, then what is that? That puts a huge burden on you. It's a single point of failure and success for the company. So I think you can't see those things when you're never gone for a long period of time. So I think
Exactly.
that's a huge advantage for the company to be able to see and get exposed in that. And I'm like, this is not big stuff. You and I will laugh about the things that I'll
Yeah.
share with you on Tuesday, but the listeners don't need to be drugged through all that. So and then the Julie piece, right? So the up and coming talent underneath you gets to stretch. And I think that's been huge for her and would be in any company. And it
Mm-hmm.
might be a whole department that gets to lift up. It might be a person. It might be the leader of that role because they have to kind of pop in and do some of those jobs. So I think that's the greatest benefit that we talked a little bit about
Yeah.
earlier.
It's funny because it's almost like a forced workforce planning assessment with this
Totally.
one particular
Yes.
role or whatever, but you get to see the gaps. It's a gap analysis.
Yep.
And to say like, oh wow, this one person was like holding on to all this information. They're gone now. What are we supposed to do?
Yep.
And
Absolutely.
that's a risk in any
Absolutely.
business too. So let's talk about the risks.
Yeah. Yeah.
From my perspective, if the employee wasn't making the best of choices while they're out, whether it's healthy choices or wasn't learning anything, wasn't getting better at their role in their area, they come back worse. I mean, that's a risk.
Hmm.
I don't know, that's just
Hmm.
came to my mind.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think because people rejuvenate in so many different ways, I mean, maybe there would be the person that would come back saying, I literally watched 114 movies
I mean,
and
I came
I'm
close,
feeling,
but
you know what I mean? Like I've no, that's awesome. I've, we've had quite a few people go through the tenure, especially. And, everyone kind of handles it a little bit different. There's some that get really adventurous and go on big
yeah.
trips. There's others that I think you did a podcast actually with Lacey around her tenure, and she did it around the holidays, which was pretty unique because most people take it in the summer
Yeah.
here in the Pacific Northwest. You're going to take advantage of the weather. But she did around the holidays, which I thought was really smart because that is a nutso time, right, for most people with kiddos, and you got family coming in, and you have holiday parties and all of that kind of stuff. So she gave herself space in
Mm-hmm.
this usually really stressful time. So yeah, I think it's a risk. Maybe it's more of a risk for the employee to not take advantage of the time versus the employer, because I feel like an employee with 4 weeks off is going to do what they see as a rejuvenation or
True.
a use the time as they see
Yeah.
good for them. And as long as they don't, another point that I think you were going to potentially make is, I mean, The biggest risk is that this sabbatical gives someone a time to fix up their resume and go look for other work.
Correct.
Right.
You and I were joking before.
Or
I think,
leave.
like before, like a couple days before I was going, like, how many interviews do I got set up? Like, will I come back? And of course, that
totally.
you know me, and you and I have a very open relationship about those kind of conversations. But like, that is always a risk. Like, will somebody come back after the sabbatical? Like, what perfect way to plan their exit during their 4 weeks off?
Sure. And I don't think that that's happened to us per se yet, right? Knock on wood.
Yeah.
But it could certainly be a risk. So if an employer is listening today, they're like, okay, but what's my risk? And I'll go back to your suggestion of 5 years. I think it would be a greater risk, those shorter durations that you get. Because someone might say, you know what, at 4 years, I'm kind of feeling antsy. I don't really see my future here, but I'm going to just hang out and wait till my 5-year sabbatical, take my 4 weeks, and then hit the road. 10 years, you can't fake it for 10 years, let's be honest, right? Either on the employer or on the employee side. You're going to cross that finish line and hopefully there's something that kept you there for a decade.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's a risk, but again, knock on wood, we haven't had anyone peel out like right after their sabbatical yet, Brandon, unless you have something you want to tell me.
Nope. I'm an open book, you know me. So the only other thing that I can think of from a risk standpoint is just straight up lost productivity from person not being present, working, or because they hold specific information like we were talking about, like a single point of failure. But ultimately, like the true cost of the sabbatical is not just continuing to pay wages, but it's the lost productivity. You're still paying out money and they're still accruing PTO, but you don't get the productivity for it. So that's the biggest risk.
And it may create some, I think the smaller the business, the bigger this issue is, and why probably a lot of small businesses haven't been able to adopt benefits like this. Because if there is a single performer in a lot of small businesses, there's one person doing X job. There's not someone to kind of fill the gaps. There's not capacity to pick up that work. So, if you have to hire a temp, a contractor, or do something creative to get the work done, that's pretty challenging and pretty expensive for a business.
Yep. Well, just kind of putting a bow on this conversation, I think it's an amazing benefit. I am 100% refreshed. I'm pretty much ready to come back.
That's great. We're ready to have you back.
For sure. It's nice to hear that.
For sure.
It's been a great time. I don't know how else to describe it other than just I've been able to clear my head, focus on myself, my family. I have been sharpening the saw, I promise you that. And it's
I would never expect anything less from you. And you only have 10 more years to go and to get another one.
I know, I'm excited.
So just think.
But
the countdown's on.
I'll tell you, like if people are considering either like implementing a sabbatical or they're going to take one, do it in the summertime. Like with the weather, there's so much more to do. So much to do.
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine in the wintertime being stuck in the house.
Right. Well, I think compare notes with Lacey, right? So she did that and used her time to do all the holiday shopping and all of that and didn't feel stressed in a time that normally is pretty stressful for her. Yep. So I think I'm with you though. You won't catch me taking a sabbatical outside of summer months because I definitely want to be outside.
And you're having no more babies, right? So you won't be taking your sabbatical during leave.
No. Yeah, no, I will not be doing that. Yeah. We're super excited to have you back. Congratulations again on the 200th episode. That's amazing that you've been at this and have created this really valuable resource for employers and HR professionals. And we're excited to get this one published and excited to have you back.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming on, Angela. I appreciate the time and it was good to reconnect with you.
Ditto. See you Tuesday.
See ya.